So if you go back to the end of the Second World War, at the end of that terrible conflict, the United States was a major player, in fact, the driving force behind the establishment of an international order that included the IMF, the World Bank, obviously reinvigorating the United Nations, NATO, and a series of informal alliances around the world that, for better or for worse, I believe, have driven 70, 80 years of incredible economic growth and the spread of democracy and freedom, and the avoidance of a third world war. It's one of the things no one ever talks about. We could have had a third world war, and these mechanisms, to some extent, help prevent that. But now we're having a debate in America, a broader debate about what is the purpose of this setup in the 21st century. And obviously there's a line of thinking that this whole international engagement on the part of the United States is a one-way street. That's one of the arguments you hear made. And I think you're seeing it in some other countries as well, but primarily here, that this is all a one-way street, this is all America does for the world, and we get nothing in return. And I don't necessarily disagree that sometimes our efforts on behalf of others is disproportionate to what we think is the return or the gratitude of others. But we also have to understand that we have benefited from this arrangement, economically, politically, geopolitically, even domestically. If you think back of what would Asia look like today if the United States had not been engaged in efforts to help Japan rebuild, or in our patience, our strategic patience, and seeing South Korea go from being a poor country and a dictatorship to a vibrant democracy and one of the largest economies in the world, and by the way, a net donor to foreign aid. What would the world look like today if Japan had not been able to progress and recover from the devastating losses it suffered during the Second World War, likewise in Europe, etc.? The U.S. benefits from this. I mean, in the end, the products we invent have to be sold somewhere. And if only 5% of the world's population, the American people, can afford to buy them, then we're really limited in how much we can grow our economy. These partnerships have helped us as well confront evil around the world. When you look at the coalitions we've been able to build to expel Saddam Hussein from Kuwait, to take on the risks we have now with Daesh, with ISIS, these are the sorts of things that again, we've been able to rely on these arrangements. So obviously no place in the world today receives more coverage with regards to these conflicts than the Middle East. And one of the fundamental questions that a lot of people have is, well, what role should we play there now? We've been involved there for the better part of a decade. Nothing ever seems to get better. Hatred towards this country, at least if you turn on the television, it seems anyway, is higher than it's ever been. Why don't we just leave and let everybody kill each other off? What is that our business, and why do we care? And so for someone like me who believes that all things being equal, while it is true that there are certainly consequences and complexities presented by our engagement, I still think that the world without American engagement is a world none of us wants to live in. And we are challenged in the 21st century not just to justify our continuing existence, but also to find ways to adjust it, to modernize, to learn from our mistakes, but ultimately to make the fundamental argument that if we are not engaged in the world, the price we pay will be much higher in the long run than the price we pay to be engaged.